So we have to about 2 hours, give or take.
Yeah, we're just about to hit the 2 hour mark right now.
Yeah, probably better not go into much else then, because these episodes are getting kind of long. Because the other thing that I talked about talking about is like a very lengthy conversation. So, the space stuff.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned the space stuff and I completely forgot what we were talking about.
Like basically that we as a species, but also particularly the U.S., we need to be building more things in space. We need more space infrastructure so that we can build other things. Like, we need to build the things that will let us build things in space. You know, like harvesting materials, production facilities, things like this, so that we can actually expand. And
didn't we just recently land our first like miner on an asteroid?
Maybe.
I think that happened like a couple days ago.
Maybe, but also I saw a guy's video who made a very compelling case for going to the moon first. So I need to apologize to your dad that I've come around to his way of thinking, though not for the same reasons. He thinks we should do it because of like technical reasons, like testing things that we'd use on Mars. But the environments are too different. I don't think it would make any difference testing stuff on the moon because there's greater gravity. There is an atmosphere. Like, Mars is a different animal than the moon. However, there's one thing I overlooked. The moon is probably insanely rich in resources. Because unlike the Earth, where we have to mine for everything, asteroids hit the moon and just smash on the surface. There's no mining needed. It's right there. And there might be more material there than out in the asteroid belt. Like, not that we want to mine it to that point, but like also because of the moon's mass, we could probably mine it for a couple centuries before we have to worry about like its shifting position because of loss of mass. So like the surface of the moon is probably just littered with all kinds of crap we can use. And so we set a production facility there that will enable us to build the other things that we'll need to expand. Because, like, say going to Mars, ideally we build a ship in space that's going to stay in space. You know, so we don't have to worry about the whole getting up from the surface of the Earth. Because that requires certain aerodynamics and things versus space travel. So if we had a dedicated ships that just remained in space, they could be more efficient, we could put more stuff on them, etc., etc. But we need to actually be able to build them in space.
No, what I say the case for like having like a moon base is not, well, because technical stuff, but mainly just to show that we could do it.
Yes, we do also want to beat certain other countries to the moon for a base. Because other countries have said they plan on building a base up there also. Well, so, yes.
To show we could do it, and also it's much easier to plan logistics.
Yeah, there is definitely a case to be made that, like, if something goes wrong on the moon, at the very least, we might actually be able to rescue the people up there. If something goes wrong on Mars, like, we'll see in 9 months, maybe, if you're really lucky.
Well, yeah, it's like months versus days.
Yeah, so there's something to be said for that, for attempting to build structures elsewhere, that it could be useful. Because to do anything on Mars, we will ultimately need to build structures that aren't going anywhere. And they'll probably have to be underground. But, no, because, like, I'm not convinced that we'll ever be able to terraform Mars. That's, like, the work of centuries, if we're lucky. But building permanent structures on Mars, that we can do. And there's certain scientific reasons for doing it. There's also, like, resource reasons for doing it. Because, say we're actually going to try to mine the asteroids. It's way easier to bring them down to the surface of Mars. We'll aim them so they don't hit the buildings that we built. And then go strip them down, get whatever we're trying to get, or maybe even make finished products. And then because of Mars' lesser gravity, it's easier to lift up into orbit and then bring it back to Earth. If that's what we're trying to do. Because there's also the case to be made that we might not be able to do that as effectively as people think. Because, like, say you get a giant asteroid full of metals and stuff. Okay, how are you going to get it down to Earth? Like, there's an obvious way, but it's going to cause some pretty obvious problems too. You know, like you are at the top of the gravity well. Like, you can just let nature take its course, but like, better make sure you hit like in the middle of like the southern Pacific Ocean or something, because otherwise you're going to cause one hell of a tsunami somewhere, and then it's going to sink to the bottom. You know, so like, what do you do? You know, your best bet is if you're making finished products that are best made in space, and then because of low gravity or something, and then loading them onto a ship and bringing them down in a controlled descent. But then you're dealing with, you can only have so many because the ships are only going to be so big. So there's a lot of logistics, like maybe the whole mining things in space isn't going to work out for helping Earth necessarily, but we could use it to build more stuff in space, which that could ultimately help the Earth, because just like the original space program, I'm sure we're going to face all kinds of engineering problems that once we figure out solutions, they'll have applications on Earth as well. You know, like that's how we got the ballpoint pen. The whole space race was worth that just by itself. They hadn't beaten the commies, which that's basically what we're going to be trying to do now, just different commies. The Chinese. Because Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about this. He's like, we didn't go to the moon because we're like, oh, it's there, we've got to do it. We did it to beat the Russians. And he's like, you want to get stuff done on Mars? Create a fake story that the Chinese are angling to go to Mars. And we'll devote all kinds of resources to beat them to it. So yeah, I don't know if terraforming Mars is realistic, but permanent structures there for scientific research and for other things, sure. And maybe even get to the point that we have actual cities, you know, because I give and understand that the whole, like, there is radiation issues because there's no atmosphere. No, sorry, there's an atmosphere, there's no magnetic field. But the levels of radiation are apparently easy to deal with. We probably just need to put lead in the walls, or sandbags of Martian dirt would be enough, because it's notably farther from the sun than the Earth is. So, but now there's a whole other conversation though that I would find fascinating with, that I'd like to have, as far as like, okay, so how does like the internet going to work there? Like, are we going to build like a string of satellites so that like we can maintain a signal, or is it going to be like ships are going to like bring like massive hard drives of like copying stuff from here, like people like put in a request or something, like bring me the updates for these sites, and then at what point do you reach a critical mass of people there that like they start having their own internet stuff, like their own memes, like people filming movies up there, and like people on Earth being like, hey, just send some of that stuff back over here. You know, like at what point does like a whole culture begin to develop there, is basically like, you know.
I mean, yeah, the isolation could do that, but the isolation also poses severe mental health problems.
Well, sure, that's why you need a lot of people, so they can all be alone together.
Well, yeah, that's why we need, like, probably the population of the ISS and more.
Oh, yeah, like for that kind of divergence, I mean, we're probably talking hundreds of thousands of people, you know, and they'll have to be there long enough that they'll begin to overcome their initial differences from Earth and become kind of like the United States. You know, initially we were, you know, the English, the French, the Germans, you know, the Spanish, the natives, and like over time we've kind of conglomerated into something closer to a cohesive unit. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. And so like it takes time, and yeah, so it takes a critical mass of people, but it will also take time. It'll take people being born, living, and dying there. You know.
Yeah, how's birth in space gonna work?
In space, I don't know. On Mars, it'll be different because Mars does have some gravity.
It's low gravity environment.
It's lower than Earth, but it's not as low as space. There's radiation, but there's not as much as space. That's why I've got a book that's about like terraforming Mars and everything. Well, exploring Mars, And the guy points out repeatedly that, like, it doesn't do us any good to send a ship there, circle the planet a few times, and turn around. Because that whole time they're being exposed to cosmic radiation. Like, you need to actually go down to the surface where you're actually kind of protected for a while, do your tests, do things like, you need to plan on being there for a while to make it worthwhile, and then if they're going to turn around and come back, leave structures behind. Did you see The Martian?
No.
It's a good movie. It's one of the very few movies where, like, science actually solves the problems instead of creating them. It's very pro science. It's very pro, like, humanity can overcome things. It's an overall very positive movie, and it takes a lot from this book I'm mentioning, as far as, like, the plan. So in the movie, they have supplies for several different missions are already there on Mars. Because they wanted backups, they wanted things for future missions, and so the guy that gets stuck there has supplies to work with. He just has to go get them. So same concept, except like the base, you would also have multiples of those. And once you finally found your ideal location, then you start bringing all that stuff together and connecting it, and you have the beginnings of an actual, like, of real structure, with multiple pods that can do multiple things. And, you just begin adding to it with more stuff that you're sending to Mars, because not everything has to be a manned mission. You just send unmanned rockets full of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting book, like the one I'm talking about. It's The Case for Mars, I think is what it's called. I've got to find it because I don't think I finished it. But yeah, and then there's the people who are saying, well, we should go to Venus instead. Like, okay. I mean, I think the idea is floating cities, definitely not the surface. Because the surface is a hellscape.
Okay, the floating city idea. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, I think that assumes that you're not going to try to terraform the planet. Because eventually the atmosphere won't be as thick and your cities are going to fall.
Yeah.
I think it's assuming you're just going to leave the planet as the hellscape. Because, yeah, like, sulfuric acid rain constantly. Yeah, no thanks. But yeah, I mean, I think that these are the things that we need to do, and we need to start doing them. And so that's why, like, I read, again, I make the mistake of reading things online. And I see people that are like, why are we spending money on this? Like, we've got to solve problems here. I'm like, well, number one, it will help solve problems here by increasing our resources ultimately. But number two, if that's your logic, we will never leave this planet. There will always be problems here. By that logic, we'd still be in the caves. There's always problems. You could try to solve multiple problems at once. Like, by that logic, why do we even go to the moon? We had problems then. Yeah, we had worse problems then, in my opinion. And so, like, I don't understand that mentality at all. Or the people are like, well, what do we need in space? And I'm like, you're probably typing this on a cell phone right now that needs satellites to work. Where do you think they are? Like, they're in space. Like, how do you think they got there? We had to have rockets to take them up there. We had to have a whole infrastructure to support them functioning. And it's just like, people are just so short-sighted. Also, NASA's budget is, like, tiny. It's like 1 or 2% of the federal budget. And it's the only part that's ever actually delivered a return on investment. Like, if anything, we should be giving them more money. Like, I know at the moment, the head of SpaceX is a bit of a controversial figure. Fair enough. But SpaceX is also not the only game in town. Like, Jeff Bezos is also throwing his hat into the Bond villain ring and wanting to be a space guy too. Literally, he wears a cowboy hat around, tied his bald head. I think. I don't know. Seems to be alright with the bald head thing. Although it does look like Blofeld from the Bond movies. But, or Lex Luthor if you prefer. Or just Telly Savalas, I guess, just not as masculine. But, Telly Savalas is a hell of an actor. Wish he was still around. But yeah, so I mean, there's other companies, and like, there's now competition. Like, so theoretically, things will improve, Plus, we have competition, from China and India. And we're still dependent on the Russians taking stuff up to space for us. even though we're kind of vaguely at war with them. You know, kind of like Europe. They want to back everything against them, but they're still buying gas from them. I don't get it. I don't know. I think they're all stupid.
I think politics is ridiculous.
Oh, very much so. That's one reason why I try to avoid talking about it.
And I think if we had a moon base, to be able to send larger rockets with more components, we send the pieces up to the moon and assemble them in a low gravity environment because you don't need nearly as much power to take off.
Yeah, and like using the moon as like a
Staging ground.
like a staging ground, refueling, resupplying, things like that. You know, that I can totally get behind. And I'm sure there's also research stuff to do up there too. You know, not just mining it. You know, I'm sure there are plenty of research opportunities. And you know, as much as I complain about like the Chinese on things, like I don't have a problem with them also having a base up there as long as we're all in agreement that we're not militarizing them. You know, as long as that's the case, like if we're doing this like in the case of, you know, because like I said, we've been cooperating with the Russians since like the 90s on space stuff. Even though they've been theoretically our enemies since the 50s. Like, but we cooperate on space stuff, so I think we could put these things behind us with China as well. And if India wants to jump into the game, you know, sure thing.
Well, I mean,
we're talking the future of humanity, not just the future of the United States.
Or, I mean, yeah, you're saying we're already cooperating on the ISS.
Yeah, you know, and maybe we need to begin looking at, you know, a larger facility, like a larger orbiting facility or multiple orbiting facilities. You know, obviously it'll take lots of planning and moving parts up, and maybe we build onto the ISS, maybe we build something else, you know, and that might be the thing that we actually build in space is the modules for that, you know, because we can build larger components in space once we have the materials, you know, and like you said, maybe we send the pieces up and assemble them in space and then put them into orbit, you know. It's just there's a lot of things that we could be doing that we should be doing. And, you know, we're not. So, yeah. We have to, because otherwise we are doomed as a species. Something is going to come along and smack into the earth, or a deadly virus is going to be released, or people are going to decide, hey, I like the cut of the jib of those Mad Max movies. Let's get this nuclear apocalypse rolling so we can get to that point. Like, I personally think that's the most likely scenario that we're going to doom ourselves. So I got the long hair, folks. This is warlord material right here. Give me some bone piercings through my nose, and I'll be ready to go. I won't be able to see shit once my glasses break, but that's all right. That's why I use a gun that shoots automatic. Easier to hit things. But yeah, like more seriously, like we have to do these things as a species. And like we talk about sci-fi stuff, like, you know, the first steps are taken somewhere. Like, may as well be in our lifetimes. Like, I don't think I'll ever step foot on another planet or anything, you know? Like, I didn't, you know, just like, probably not going to happen. Yeah. No reason can't start, though. Yeah. Owen, you got anything else?
No.
No, soaring optimism for the future and or pessimism for the present?
No, not really.
All right, well, fair enough. Kind of hard to come up with that on the spot. But yeah, like that's a longer conversation I would like to have. And again, like I said, the whole like, what's it going to take for culture to develop elsewhere? You know, that's interesting. Like, I want your dad to come back to some Star Trek stuff like that I want to talk about. Like, do you think the various ships have like their own internal memes? And like when they get back to Starbase, to like swap them around or something? You know, do you think anything like that happens in Star Trek? You know. But anyway, so your dad. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's where we're going to go ahead and cut this one off, folks. Thank you for watching. This has been a Geek Cabal video, Echoes of a Whisper. This has been a clip from one of our podcasts. The link to the actual podcast this is from is in the description of the video if you want to see the entire thing, which we obviously encourage you to do. But otherwise, if you enjoyed what you saw, a thumbs up is always appreciated. Subscriptions and all the rest is definitely appreciated. Comments, as always. But just in general, thank you for watching. Hope you liked it. And check out the other videos we have here on the channel. See you later.